Viewer discretion advised. Please be advised that this video includes translations of historical speeches or works, recreated using advanced AI tools to replicate the original voices and styles. These reproductions may contain controversial, sensitive, or outdated viewpoints and language. The content is presented in its historical context and does not reflect the views or values of this channel. Viewer discretion is advised, particularly for younger audiences.
I think that it will depend upon the sincerity and loyalty with which we join in this meeting, whether it will become an historical event or a little fact of everyday life destined to pass without leaving any trace. This being the case, it will not surprise you if I speak with a frankness almost brutal. I add at once that the friendly confusion of this moment of reunion after schisms and separations will not eliminate the necessity of settling certain personal and political questions. Otherwise, this union, which we wish to be eminently fruitful, cannot be other than painfully sterile. What are we looking for? We who are members of USM, the Fascio of Fighters, the Association of Fighters, the Association of Arditi, the Union of Demobilized, the Association of Volunteers, the Association of Garibaldians, the Republican Party, the Italian Socialist Union, the Corridoni Club, etc. We who are together represented in the Committee of Intesa e Azione, which was formed at the time of the movement against the high cost of living. We are looking for the least common denominator for this understanding and action. Shall we find it? Yes. We come from different schools. We have different temperaments, and temperaments divide men more widely than ideas. We belong to an individualist people, but all this does not prevent something else bringing us together and binding us both in these present contingencies and in that which has to do with the action of tomorrow. The basis of unity. There can be 1,000 shades of ideas among us, but upon one important point we are all agreed, and that is in regarding the socialist manifestation as a bluff, a comedy, a speculation, and blackmail. Also, we are all agreed in making a differentiation between the Socialist Party and the mass of the workmen. The Socialist Party has usurped up to yesterday the name of being a pure revolutionary organization, of being the protector and the exclusive, genuine representative of the working masses. This is all nonsense and must be cleared up. Referring to statistics, we find that out of 42 million of Italians, hardly 60,000 were enrolled in the Socialist Party in the August of 1919, and the dominating element is a group composed of lower middle-class people in the most Philistine sense of the word. In the unlikely and absurd event of a triumph on the part of the Leninist revolutionaries, 10 of these idiots would be, tomorrow, the 10 ministers of the Italian nation. The Socialist Party is one thing, and the organized mass of working men another, and the disorganized mass yet another, and 7 times larger than the rest put together. We must not allow ourselves to approach the working classes in the sometimes unctuous, sometimes theatrical manner of the demagogues. The masses must be educated, and for this reason must have the straight truth. Many of the crowds which the socialists sway are not worthy of blandishments, because they consist of masses of brutes infected and barbarized by the red gospel. Our working class colleagues know all about it, because they have had to leave certain factories. We must not present ourselves to the masses as charlatans, promising paradise within a short time, but as educators who do not seek either success, popularity, salaries, or votes. Produce, produce, produce. The admonition of Merheim, the way in which the working masses should and must be spoken to, has been shown us by Merheim, one of the thinking heads of French syndicalism. Last January, he made a very important speech, and it would be a good thing to run over those parts of it which are now of most importance, especially those touching upon the relations between economics and politics and the necessity of production. The militant socialists must tell the truth, and all the truth to the masses, even if the truth brings hatred and slander. Now the truth is, for all those who reflect, that the bad conditions of life which are the trouble of the masses, are not going to be remedied by a solution based on an increase of wages, which is not only inoperative, but entirely in opposition to economic laws. The masses must be told that the regime of production and distribution of commodities must undergo a transformation if efficacious and lasting remedies are to be found for existing bad conditions, and that this can be arrived at by means of the force of organization. It is pleasant to provoke loud applause by telling the audience at meetings that we are overstocked with commodities and that they can consume without limit and enjoy comfort by imposing wages proportionate to their desires without increasing production. Courage lies in repeating to the masses that each man is at the same time a producer and consumer, and that the continued increase of production is necessary and indispensable. Courage lies in saying that it is not only impossible to satisfy those normal needs natural to everyone without normal production, but that it is absolutely impossible to obtain general comfort for everyone if at the same time individual production in the general interest is not increased. Courage lies in proclaiming that the purely political revolution which inflames the people's minds would not solve the social problem, the solution of which has been precipitated and rendered essential by the war. Courage lies in repeating untiringly to the masses that the revolution which must be brought about must be economic, and that it is not to be brought about in the streets by a delirious crowd destroying for the sake of destruction. Courage lies in saying that an economic revolution draws its substance from labor, and that it is strengthened, advanced, and carried out by the intensification of production, whether in the fields or in the factories, and by a further utilization of scientific processes and methods of production. The Italian situation, we agree upon a third point in connection with existing circumstances, that is in maintaining that our national situation is critical, though far from being desperate. Briefly, it is this. From the 1st July, we have been defaulting debtors of England. Since the 31st July, other financial agreements with the United States must be faced. To save the situation, a loan of $1 million must be arranged. The railways have a coal supply for only 15 more days. There are enough provisions for another 20 days, that is to say until the end of the month. 2 million tons of food must be imported to save us from immediate hunger. But these financial and economic agreements depend upon the political ones at Paris. The possibility, almost a certainty, has presented itself to us of obtaining large concessions in Asia Minor with the coal mines of Heraclea. Clemenceau has made difficulties about it, but Lansing told him that he could not see any obstacle, given that Italy approved of the exploitation of the Saar mines on the part of France. We may also obtain oil wells in Armenia. But these acquisitions in the East are in their turn subordinate to the Adriatic agreements. The solution of the problem of Fiume is already compromised by the work of the preceding delegation, which had already accepted the principle of a free state. But the project of Tardieu presented future dangers as far as the safeguarding of the Italian character of Fiume is concerned, because the Italian majority in the city would be overwhelmed by the mass of Slavs in the country. It is a question then of reducing these dangers to the smallest possible limits by the introduction of another plan which would substitute for the idea of a free state that of a free city with limited boundaries. In Dalmatia, it is only possible for us to save the centers which have an Italian majority, with guarantees for the safeguarding of those Italian minorities scattered in the other centers. The eventual loss of Sebenico, which had strategic and not national value, would be compensated for by some other strategic point to be given to Italy. Lansing said that this would be eventually sought for in the Mediterranean. Given this situation, it is no exaggeration to say that the general socialist strike is a real attempted crime against the nation. And note, I could understand a strike which had as its object the setting up of the Soviet in Italy, but I do not understand or admit this one, which is without aim, object, or justification. It must and will fail because the leaders themselves are in the cul-de-sac of this dilemma. Either tragedy, because the state at this moment has its repressive machinery in full working order, or comedy in the event of a revolt on the part of the workmen already outlined, and due to their being tired of serving a socialist party mostly composed of middle-class elements. Perhaps it is worthwhile in passing to confute the objection in the Stampa of Portogruaro, which would like to deny our right of rising up against the strike on the ground that we were in favor of war. What, it says, is the damage done in 2 days of strike compared with that done in 4 years of war? We crushed these gentlemen with the reply, 4 years of neutrality would have damaged us more, besides having been to our lasting and ineffaceable moral shame, reactionaries and vice versa. For me, revolution is not an attack of St. Vitus's dance or an unexpected fit of epilepsy. It must have force, aims, and above all, method. In 1913, when the Socialist Party was already rotten, it was I who put into circulation the words which made the pulses of the big men of Italian socialism beat. This proletariat is in need of a bath of blood, I said. It has had it, and it lasted for 3 years. This proletariat is in need of a day of history, and it has had 1,000. It was necessary then to shake up the masses because they had fallen into a state of weakness and insensibility. Today, this situation exists no longer. Today, the only way not to live in fear of a revolution is to think that we are now in the full swing of one, that it began in the August of 1914, and that it is still going on. It is not a question, as some think, of entering into a revolution as one passes from a state of tranquility to a state of action. The task of really free spirits is different. If this great and immense process of changing the world stagnates or becomes confused, we can hasten it on. But if it is already progressing at a frantic rate, then our task is to apply the brakes and slow it down in order to avoid disintegration and ruin. To be revolutionaries in certain circumstances, time and place, can be the pride of a lifetime. But when those who speak of revolution are a lot of parasites, then one must not be afraid in opposing them to pass as a reactionary. One is always a reactionary and revolutionary for somebody. Fritz Adler, revolutionary in the time of Sturk, is a reactionary today compared with the communists. I am not afraid of the word. I am a revolutionary and a reactionary. Really, life is always like this. I am afraid of the revolution which destroys and does not create. I fear going to extremes, the policy of madness, at the bottom of which may lie the destruction of this our fragile mechanical civilization, robbed of its solid moral basis, and the coming of a terrible race of dominators who would reintroduce discipline into the world and re-establish the necessary hierarchies with the cracking of whips and machine guns. The compass. At the same time, as regards reaction and revolution, I have a compass in my pocket which guides me. All that which tends towards making the Italian people great finds me favorable, and vice versa. All that which tends towards lowering, brutalizing, and impoverishing them finds me opposed. Now, socialism comes into the second category. I find it odd that my friend Carly, the founder of the National Association of Fighters and a valiant soldier, puts the socialists among the advanced parties, storming them with a succession of whys, as he did in the last number of the Roma Futurista. I deny the title of vanguard to socialism. I deny the use and timeliness of any cooperation with this party. I maintain that a reactionary party in 1914, 15, 16, 17, and 18 cannot become revolutionary in 19. I maintain that this serenading of the socialists is useless, and this making of advances not clean. One day, in the culminating moment of the history of humanity, they embraced the cause of reaction represented by the Germany, the Hohenzollerns, and Sudekum. Besides, it is idiotic and dangerous to lavish blandishments upon the official socialists. We cannot reconcile ourselves with these people. There have been those who have attached themselves to the movement of today, but the socialists have disdained that help because they are megalomaniacs and nourish, among other things, the fatuous vanity of splendid isolation. The revision of the Treaty of Versailles, The Peace of Versailles is not a sufficient motive for the courted collaboration. Things must be made clear. The socialists talk of annulling the peace. We wish simply to revise it. We do not condemn wholesale a peace, which a German, and not one of the most insignificant, Edward Bernstein, has called 9 parts just. The revision of the peace must not mean condemnation of the war. The Florentine Republican Union has published a manifesto which defines the limits of protest against the Treaty of Versailles. We do not wish to conceal, say the Florentine Republicans, that although requiring radical amendments, the treaty is, after all, the consecration of the fall of 4 imperial autocracies, the fall of numerous dynasties, the creation of as many republics, the re-establishment of Poland, the reconquest of Alsace and Lorraine, and of Trento and Trieste by Italy, and of Jerusalem by civilized Europe. All this would suffice as long as emendations were made to bear witness to the supreme sanctity of the Italian intervention in the atrocious war let loose by the brutal German Hohenzollerns and Habsburgs. We do not approve, however, of the proposed general strike as a form of protest, because, and we say so with the traditional sincerity of our party, the country is thirsty for fruitful work, and this deluge of strikes certainly does not help in that. The Peace of Versailles must be corrected and brought into keeping with the progress of humanity. This is also our idea. Rather than seek or beg for useless cooperation, let us outline a program of our own, of understanding and action. I refuse, after having got rid of the old, to accept the new dogmas. I think that it is possible to create a strong economic organization in Italy based upon these principles. 1. Absolute independence from all parties, groups, and sets. 2. Federation and autonomy. 3. Abolition, as far as possible, of all paid officials. 4. No steps to be taken without having consulted regularly, by means of a referendum, the masses interested. The means of obtaining this end may be altered according to time and place. The organization will promote at times cooperation, and at times war between the classes and the expropriation of class. It will not always be for cooperation, but neither will it always be in favor of class preservation, and when it expropriates, it will not be to make all poor, but to make all rich. In the conquest of a colonial market, and in certain questions connected with the customs, the middle classes and the proletariat can work together. When there is division of booty, then class war. But class war in times of underproduction is destructive nonsense. In the political field, the electoral reform will pass. The scrutiny of lists and proportional representation will pass. That will determine, for obvious reasons, the great coalitions, the socialist-Leninist, the clerical popular, and lastly ours, which might be called the Alliance for the Constituent, the Republican Alliance, or the group of the interveners of the left. Our program is to present candidates who pledge themselves to place the problem of constitutional revision before the new chamber in the first session. This is the constituent, as I understand it. This is the lowest denominator to which all of us can pledge ourselves and around which we can all form a union. The moment is particularly propitious for such an organization. I think that all we who are represented in this Milanese Committee of Intesa e Azione can follow this path. It is a case of nationalizing this attempt, of making it general all over Italy. We could, if we wished, number not thousands, but millions of followers. I myself refuse, in the actual delicate economic situation in Italy, to adhere to any movement which makes the path clear for Bolshevism and ruin. The victory cannot and must not be destroyed. I understand a certain impatience, but I beg you to reflect that if the lives of individuals are counted in years, the lives of nations are counted in centuries, and we must not refer egoistically to ourselves that which is of a general nature. Good strategy is calculation and audacity. We do not wish to govern by recourse to the bayonet alone, because that would be dictatorship which we condemn. We wish first to sound the masses by the coming elections. Once having had our principles accepted, we will spring to action. The revolution which we desired and obtained in 1915 will be ours again by the victorious peace in its conclusive phase, and it will be called well-being, liberty, and above all, Italy.
If you have suggestions for other historical speeches or works you'd like to see recreated, please leave a comment below with your recommendations. Your input is invaluable in shaping our content. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more unique and thought-provoking content. Thank you for watching and being part of our community.